You know those bad guys who creep you out in horror movies? Turns out some of them might be more grounded in reality than you think. What if we told you that some of cinema's most iconic villains weren't entirely fictional creations? Throughout movie history, screenwriters and directors have drawn inspiration from the darkest corners of reality, crafting chilling antagonists based on real-life figures. These villains aren't just scary. They hold a disturbing mirror to the capacity for evil that exists within our own world. We've compiled this list that tells you about 13 of cinema's most iconic villains who were actually inspired by real people. We're talking about everything from messed up writers to media moguls with a serious control complex. Ever wonder if that terrifying chainsaw maniac was based on a real serial killer? Or maybe that ruthless mafia boss has a whisper of a famous gangster in him? We'll explore the connections and see how these villains weren't just scary, they were low-key channeling real-life evil. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Hannibal Lecter, The Silence of the Lambs, 1991. We're about to dissect the origins of a cinematic monster. Hannibal Lecter, the spine-tingling psychiatrist with a taste for the macabre, wasn't just dreamed up by author Thomas Harris. Lecter has real-world roots, and they're just as disturbing as the fictional cannibal himself. During a prison visit in Mexico, Harris encountered a real-life Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Dr. Alfredo Bali Trevino. This sophisticated murderer wasn't a carbon copy of Lecter, but he definitely planted the seeds for the character. Lecter's monstrous personality was further fleshed out by drawing inspiration from other real-life figures. Ted Bundy, the manipulative serial killer, likely lent Lecter his ability to play people. Ed Kemper, another intelligent murderer with dark desires, might have influenced Lecter's gruesome tendencies. But Trevino provided the chilling foundation. Both were doctors, making their murderous deeds even more unsettling. Lecter could blend in, using his medical expertise to manipulate his victims while appearing perfectly respectable. Their contrasting backgrounds, Trevino from privilege, Lecter with a tragic past, highlight that evil can emerge from any social class. The parallels get even creepier. Trevino, like Lecter, possessed an uncanny ability to dissect human behavior. And let's just say Trevino's way of handling his victim mirrored Lecter's disturbing culinary preferences. While Harris didn't simply copy Trevino, Lecter's theatricality and elegant cannibalism were definitely influenced by that encounter. But the core of the character, the intelligent, cultured monster lurking beneath the surface, can be traced back to that prison visit. The truly frightening aspect? This story isn't just about fiction. It serves as a chilling reminder that evil can lurk anywhere, even disguised as a trusted professional. The people we know could be harboring some truly horrifying secrets.
You murdered my misery!
Eddie!
Annie Wilkes, Misery, 1990. Misery, both Stephen King's chilling novel and Rob Reiner's equally terrifying 1990 film adaptation, left audiences wondering if the villain, Annie Wilkes, was based on a real person. The answer is complicated. Around the time King wrote Misery, a real-life horror story unfolded. A licensed vocational nurse named Janine Jones, dubbed the Angel of Death, was convicted of murdering patients under her care. Nurses are supposed to be the symbols of care and healing, especially for vulnerable infants and children. But Jones was the opposite. A shadow followed her wherever she worked, with a disturbing number of patients falling ill and dying under her watch. While estimates suggest she may have killed up to 60 infants, only the murder of 15-month-old Chelsea McClellan with succinylcholine could be definitively proven, leading to Jones's 99-year prison sentence. Annie Annie Wilkes, in Misery, mirrored Jones's crimes in a fictional way. After rescuing, and then imprisoning, famous author Paul Sheldon, Annie drugged and murdered patients just like Jones. While working as a head maternity nurse, a mysterious string of 11 infant deaths occurred during her tenure. Although Annie was tried for these deaths, she was never found guilty. Interestingly, Misery director Rob Reiner believes Janine Jones loosely inspired Annie Wilkes, but Stephen King himself has never confirmed this connection. King has offered a different explanation for Annie's creation. In his autobiography, On Writing, he reveals that Annie was a dark reflection of his own struggles with addiction. Annie was coke, Annie was booze, he wrote, describing her as a representation of the demons that held him captive. King credits Annie with giving him the final push he needed to overcome his addictions.
To cause more pain than a man can possibly enjoy.
Le Chiffre, Casino Royale, 2006. Well, forget the usual Bond villain tropes. Casino Royale took a darker turn with Le Chiffre, a ruthless mastermind financing terrorism. Played with chilling intensity by Mads Mikkelsen, Le Chiffre wasn't just your average bad guy. The character's origins are surprisingly real. Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, drew inspiration from Aleister Crowley, a notorious occultist. Look closely and you'll see the connection. Both Le Chiffre and Crowley share a distinct physical trait: fully visible whites around the iris. The infamous torture scene in Casino Royale takes on a whole new level of disturbing when you consider Crowley's known interest in sadomasochism. It seems Fleming wasn't afraid to delve into the dark side of reality to create a genuinely terrifying villain. The original Le Chiffre in Ian Fleming's novel Casino Royale was a plump, clean-shaven fellow inspired by Aleister Crowley, the famous occultist. Fleming reportedly met Crowley briefly during World War II, and that encounter left a mark. Interestingly, some believe Fleming used Crowley as a model for many of his villains beyond Le Chiffre. The story behind their meeting is even more intriguing. It all revolves around the bizarre 1941 arrival of Rudolf Hess, Hitler's deputy, in Scotland. As author Mark Simmons reveals in Ian Fleming's War, Fleming's wartime experiences were packed with adventures, and this brush with Crowley stands out as one of the most remarkable. Jason Voorhees, Friday the 13th. While Friday the 13th creator Sean S. Cunningham denies any real-life inspiration, a chilling 1963 murder in Finland bears an uncanny resemblance to the film. 4 Finnish teenagers on a summer camping trip at Lake Bodom became victims of a horrific crime. The next morning, a single survivor was found unconscious, while the other 3 lay murdered, killed with a sharp object. The scene itself mirrored the movie's horror. A slashed tent hinted at a struggle, and the investigation yielded frustratingly few answers due to limited forensic techniques back then. The traumatized survivor could only recall a shadowy figure in black attacking them. The case remains unsolved. The similarities between the Lake Bodom murders and Friday the 13th are hard to ignore. Both involve teenagers at a secluded campsite, a brutal assault with a blade, and a sole survivor. Sure, the details differ. Jason Voorhees is a supernatural monster, while the Lake Bodom case involved a human attacker, but the core elements are eerily close. This has led many to believe the real-life tragedy might have been a loose inspiration for the fictional Camp Crystal Lake massacre.
You pitiful, insignificant fool!
Ursula from The Little Mermaid cartoon. Ursula, the unforgettable sea witch from Disney's The Little Mermaid, isn't just about her booming voice and curvy figure. There's a surprising backstory to her flamboyant theatricality, inspiration from the drag queen legend Divine. It's not just a visual connection. Both Ursula and Divine loved the spotlight. Divine's performances were famous for outrageous costumes, witty barbs, and audience interaction. A mirror image of Ursula's dramatic entrances, speeches, flamboyant gestures, and show-stopping numbers like Poor Unfortunate Souls. Beyond entertainment, both challenged societal norms. Divine, a gay man performing in drag, playfully defied expectations of masculinity. Ursula, a powerful woman who rocks her unconventional beauty and wields magic, subverts the fairy tale trope of the helpless damsel. This connection resonates even today. When Melissa McCarthy took on Ursula in the live-action remake, she openly acknowledged Divine's influence. With her experience in performing drag, McCarthy brought a similar sense of humor and theatricality to the role. Imhotep from The Mummy. Forget the Hollywood villain. Believe it or not, The Mummy's Imhotep has a real-life counterpart. The movie sets Imhotep as a high priest in love with the pharaoh's mistress, driven by dark magic. But the real Imhotep, who lived thousands of years ago, was a whole different story. Historical records show Imhotep was a respected figure from the 3rd dynasty of Egypt. He wasn't a villain, but a brilliant architect, credited with designing the revolutionary Step Pyramid, a massive stone structure that marked a turning point in Egyptian architecture. Imhotep's talents likely went beyond architecture. He might have been a polymath, skilled in many fields, with titles suggesting expertise in religion, art, and possibly even medicine. After his death, Imhotep's reputation only grew. Egyptians revered his accomplishments, and over time, he became a legendary figure associated with healing and wisdom. So, how did this revered figure turn into a movie villain? Hollywood took some creative liberties. Their Imhotep is a vengeful mummy fueled by dark magic, a far cry from the respected architect and potential healer of history.
Pay me $1 million.
Dr. Evil, Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, 1997. Dr. Evil, the wacky villain from Austin Powers, is a comedy goldmine. Mike Myers, the genius behind him, drew inspiration from 2 surprising sources: Lorne Michaels, his former boss at Saturday Night Live, and the legendary Bond villain actor Donald Pleasance. Many, including anonymous SNL writers and actors, believe Lorne Michaels heavily influenced Dr. Evil's quirks. They point to the character's nitpicking ways, his pinky-up fingernail chewing, and his overall air of annoyance. These became Dr. Evil's signature traits, hilariously amplified for comedic effect. However, Myers himself downplays Michael's influence. He admits the voice has some Michaels in it, but insists the main inspiration came elsewhere. Myers also credits Pleasance, who played the iconic Bond villain Blofeld in Dr. Evil's look. Pleasance's bald head, scar, and menacing presence laid the groundwork for Dr. Evil's visual design. Ghostface, the Scream franchise. Wes Craven's Scream wasn't just a clever whodunit with a killer mask. Beneath the layers of horror and humor, this 1996 film had a dark secret: inspiration from a real-life terror. A seemingly peaceful college town in Gainesville, Florida, became a nightmare in 1990. A brutal 2-week spree by Danny Rolling, the Gainesville Ripper, left 5 students attacked, 4 of them murdered. Rolling's crimes were shockingly violent, targeting young women living alone. Gruesome details saturated the media, turning a national spotlight on the town's fear. This relentless media frenzy had a disturbing effect. The graphic details, sensationalized coverage, and even publishing of Rolling's diary fueled fear and possibly inspired copycat crimes elsewhere. For horror maestro Wes Craven, the Gainesville murders sparked a creative response. Already known for classics like A Nightmare on Elm Street, Craven saw a chance to explore society's obsession with violence and the media's role in amplifying fear. Scream became his chilling reflection of a dark reality.
Let's you and I remind them, shall we?
Eric Ludendorff, Wonder Woman 2017. Eric Ludendorff stepped out of history books and into superhero films with his portrayal in Wonder Woman 2017. The movie depicts him as a ruthless German general in World War I, blurring the lines between reality and the fantastical DC universe. Let's peel back those layers and see the real Ludendorff. The real Ludendorff was a military leader who rose to prominence during World War I. Early on, he excelled, especially on the Eastern Front. Partnering with Paul von Hindenburg, he devised clever tactics that outsmarted the Russians. His strategic mind was displayed with the elastic defense, where enemy troops would be lured into weak lines only to be crushed by artillery. Ludendorff's power grew as the war raged, making him practically the ruler of Germany. He championed total war, demanding the government become a military dictatorship with the entire economy funneling into the war effort. This meant civilians were fair game. Everyone was a soldier or a potential resource for the enemy. Ludendorff's wartime and governing strategies were brutal and dictatorial. He backed unrestricted submarine warfare, a move that enraged the US and brought them into the war in 1917, ultimately sealing Germany's fate. Back home, his policies prioritized military needs over civilians, leading to economic collapse, skyrocketing food prices, and widespread starvation due to the British blockade. When the war ended, Ludendorff fell from grace. He initially took full responsibility, but the German people turned on him, blaming him for their suffering. He fled the country only to return in 1919 and dodge blame. He then spread the stabbed in the back myth, claiming Germany's defeat wasn't his fault, but the result of traitors within, often targeting German Jews. Wonder Woman takes creative liberties with Ludendorff, played by Danny Huston. The film blends historical facts with fantastical elements. He's shown working with the fictional Dr. Poison to build a weapon of mass destruction, highlighting his ruthless and authoritarian nature. The movie ends with Wonder Woman confronting Ludendorff, whom she initially mistakes for the Greek god of war, Ares. The real Ludendorff and his movie counterpart differ because the film mixes his true wartime ideas with the DC Universe's supernatural aspects. While the real Ludendorff undeniably played a major role in World War I, his legacy is tainted by his controversial actions and the myths that followed. Scorpio, Dirty Harry. Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry, 1971, pits Inspector Harry Callahan against a chilling villain, Scorpio. But Scorpio wasn't pure fiction. He stemmed from a real-life fear, the unsolved Zodiac Killer case that plagued San Francisco just a few years before. The Zodiac Killer's reign of terror in the 1970s Bay Area remains a baffling mystery, responsible for at least 6 confirmed murders with links to potentially 30 more across California and Nevada. The Zodiac Killer taunted the police and media with cryptic messages. This taunting became Scorpio's signature move in Dirty Harry, mirroring the Zodiac's threat to kill school children on a bus. The movie even has a similar scene where Dirty Harry foils Scorpio's plans to kidnap a bus full of kids. Stranger yet, the film's influence might have seeped into reality. Some believe it inspired copycat crimes, including real-life bus kidnappings and an abduction case. Henry and Otis. Henry, a portrait of a serial killer. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, isn't a straightforward biopic. While inspired by real-life killer Henry Lee Lucas, director John McNaughton uses this dark chapter to explore a murderer's mind, brutal acts, and the twisted relationship between Henry and his accomplice Otis, based on Otis Toole, unfold on screen. The film freely blends fact and fiction. McNaughton takes advantage of the ambiguity surrounding Lucas's confessions to craft a story that's both gripping and unsettling. Lucas himself is known for tall tales and retractions, and the movie portrays Henry as a killer who can't be trusted, even about himself. This complexity makes Henry a fascinating and disturbing character. The low-budget production creates a raw, almost documentary-like feel. The violence is unflinching and brutal, but not glorified. The film's X rating reflects McNaughton's refusal to compromise on his vision. It forces viewers to confront the harsh reality of violence. Mickey and Mallory, Natural-Born Killers. Oliver Stone's Natural-Born Killers, 1994, isn't your typical crime drama. Mickey and Mallory Knox, the troubled young couple at its center, take viewers on a bloody road trip across America. But it's more than just violence. It's a dark satire that exposes America's obsession with media, fame, and glorifying criminals. Mickey, Woody Harrelson, and Mallory, Juliette Lewis, are both damaged by their pasts. Mickey, charismatic yet twisted, sees himself as a natural-born killer. Mallory, vulnerable yet fierce, grapples with her own demons. Their murders aren't random. They're a twisted performance for the media, fueled by a desire to rebel against a society they hate. This is where Stone criticizes the media. Wayne Gale, Robert Downey Jr., the sensationalist journalist, embodies how the media glorifies violence and creates celebrity criminals. The film's chaotic visuals, mixing black and white, animation, and film stocks, reflect the characters' fractured psyches and the media frenzy surrounding them. Mickey and Mallory are complex. They're victims of a violent world, yet they create their own violent reality. The film forces us to question evil. Is it something we're born with, or does society create it? Their love is another dark theme, intense and devoted. It's built on shared trauma and violence. It's a twisted reflection of true love, showing how even the strongest emotions can become destructive. Natural-Born Killers sparked outrage for its graphic violence and supposed links to real-life crimes, but it's also praised for its bold critique of American culture and the media's power. It remains a controversial film, forcing viewers to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and the world around them. Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Leatherface, the iconic chainsaw-wielding maniac from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, may be fictional, but the film's chilling atmosphere draws heavily from real-life events. The creepy house where the cannibalistic family resides and the overall sense of dread is rooted in disturbing truths. This influential horror film, known for its faceless, hulking killer, broke new ground in the genre. But who inspired this terrifying villain? Look no further than Ed Gein, the real-life Plainfield ghoul, whose crimes sent shockwaves through the nation in the 1950s. Gein's disturbing acts, wearing women's clothing and mutilating corpses, laid the groundwork for Leatherface's character. Just like Leatherface, Gein exhumed bodies, crafted grotesque keepsakes from their remains, and confessed to murdering at least 2 women. This isn't the first time Gein's crime served as inspiration for horror. He's also credited with influencing Norman Bates in Psycho. Both Leatherface and Gein share a fascination with wearing women's clothes and dismembering bodies, with Leatherface's low IQ mirroring the real-life killer's intellectual limitations. The human skin mask Leatherface wears isn't just a random addition. It serves a dual purpose, hiding his identity and evoking a sickening reality of Ed Gein's crimes. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre may be a work of fiction, but it takes its horror straight from the disturbing playbook of a real-life monster. Marvelous verdict. Yeah, it sucks to find out that the scary villains we see in movies are actually as real as we can imagine. For all you know, you've already crossed paths with the person who will inspire the next horror blockbuster. Any more villains you think are inspired by someone in real life? Tell us in the comments. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe out there. Thanks, everyone.